How about this? Try now. We will call this meeting to order. Call the roll, please. Call the roll.
Councilmember Fitzgerald,
Here.
Councilmember Alvarez,
Here.
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Stokes,
Here.
Councilmember Todd,
Here.
Councilmember Saper,
Here.
Councilmember Schneider,
Here.
and Councilmember Smith is absent.
Thank you. This evening's Pledge of Allegiance this evening will be led by Councilman Fitzgerald. All right, there we go. And then I'm going to pull item number 17 off the agenda. And then with that, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda? Or further amendments?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next item, comments from the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak this evening, please step up to the microphone. And none. Item number 6, Fire Prevention Week proclamation. There you go. Discussion items. Item number 7, Northland Assistance Center Emergency Housing discussion. Good evening, Rita. And you are.
Mayor and City Council members, I want to share some information from what you donated to my agency or approved last year, which was $30,000 minus 5% for administrative fees. We did 548 room nights at about $52 per night. We housed 147 adults. Most of that money was done during the cold weather indication of the MOU. And then as I came back to you on April 31st and said, I need to give you the funds back, and then on May 2nd, you said we had about $2,000 and I could do it for emergency lodging. I'm coming to you to tell you that not only did we spend that, but after we spent that, we came to the fire department and their community service thing, and they gave us $1,000 more, which we just spent. So we spent all of it. And the way we spent it, mostly because under our MOU, the original 2 MOUs were under cold weather. The last $2,000 some odd dollars we did for hot weather, we did for domestic violence, we did for people who are stranded, or other kinds of things that people appealed to our agency for. I'm here to ask that you allocate the same amount of funds. I think we can spend them appropriately. And not only that, that we amend the MOU to not just include cold weather, but emergency lodging, which would allow for domestic violence, heat-related kinds of things, people who are stranded, people who are released from the hospital and have no place to go until they can contact other individuals. I can literally, if you want, give you 3 examples, weirdly enough, one tonight, that would explain why it should be emergency lodging if you would like for me to. I would also like to thank you for trusting us with these funds. I will be happy to report every month, as I have in the past, what we've used these funds for. I cannot tell you specifically if it's cold, domestic violence, somebody's stranded, because that's inappropriate for our agency. We do not allocate it. We do not designate it like that. We just do emergency lodging, particularly with domestic violence. So basically, it's a trust thing. You guys have given me a lot of money over the years, particularly through COVID. I think I have managed them very well. Our agency has, and I hope that you will do that. I don't know, haven't researched it, but I would like to say that you should be really proud of yourselves, because I think this is one of the only cities that have actually paid attention to these issues, who have allowed emergency providers to call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they have. Everybody has my cell phone number, so that anybody who is in need of emergency lodging can be taken care of here. We're at an intersection of many, many streets, so sometimes people are just stranded here. Individual that we just put into housing tonight, I got a call from the police department, is an Afghanistan refugee, and he has not had time to access resources for that, and we're going to put him up at least for a night. and, or maybe more, not that many more, until he can find a way to find himself. The city should be really proud of itself for doing this, and I'm really proud and humbled that you have trusted our agency to do this. And if you have any questions in regard to the allocation of how we do these funds, I'd be happy to answer any questions. But my appeal to you is, if you choose to give us funds, and I already spent the $30,000, and the fire department helped me with the last $1,000 I'm doing right now, is that you do it as emergency lodging instead of doing it as we did 2 years ago. I appealed to the council 2 years ago. I literally came to the council 2 years ago and said, we do not want anyone to die in our city. When the individual died in Kansas City, I said, we need to do a better job. I formed a relationship with the American Inn, which is working very well, and nobody's died in our city. And we have yet to not house someone unless they don't have ID. But let me tell you this, one other story. We have housed someone without ID, thanks to the fire department and their money. I got a call 2 weeks ago. A woman fled a domestic violence situation here in North Kansas City. Husband threw her phone against a wall, kept her from getting her IDs. She had a cat who she is attached to, and the American Inn, because of the relationship we formed there, for the first time in the 3 or 4 years I've worked with them, allowed her to come in without an ID, allowed her to bring her cat in, which they do not allow pets. The person at the desk clerk, because it was not a police referral, knew she could contact me later, paid for her room until I could get to her the next day, and then Northland Assistance Center gave her a $100 guest card so she could flee to Alabama. I'm assuming that law enforcement or someone got her IDs and things for her. I don't know the backstory of that. But these are the kinds of things we run into all the time. I don't think we realize in Northland that there are situations like this. The hospital contacts me, the police department contacts me, the American Inn contacts me. And that was a really unusual situation. I couldn't believe they let her in with her cat. I know it's kind of silly, but they don't allow pets. And she had no money and no ID or anything. And they just trusted us enough that we would come through the next day. So I would ask, if you determine monies for us, that you do it for emergency lodging rather than restrict it to just cold weather. And there is a reason to do it at cold weather. We need to kick off this program. But if we can move it forward, that would be great.
All right, so I believe council members, do me all favor.
I appreciate the relationships that you've built, and I know that that goes a long way. The cold weather that we have set up, I think, is an excellent program. It goes through the channels, proper channels, to see if there is other housing available first, and is only used if and when all the shelters are full and there's nowhere for anyone to go. And as we've stated before, the most dangerous part during cold weather is in the evenings when we don't have public facilities open versus hot weather. The most dangerous part during the day when we do have public facilities open. I know that there is a need for these other things, but I would really like to keep cold weather separate. And if we were doing the funds again, I would definitely want to keep that separate so we can track that care that we're doing, a very specific, targeted care of helping people make it through the cold winter months. If we were doing domestic violence and other things, I think we should look at approaching that in another way. But I would like to keep this separated because as we're asked for more money, as the years go by, I want to know what it's going towards.
So I'm going to follow up with you on a question about kind of the data side of this. I can understand you not wanting to flag that in like someone's individual file per se, what reason they're in there, but could you anonymously track that on another sheet just to say, here's the counts, just so you have some sort of
I have two
idea.
questions before me, okay?
Yeah, sorry.
Let me answer Lisa's question first.
Yep.
I understand the cold weather piece, and that's how we set this whole thing up. I get that. And if it were emergency lodging, and because the city, with COVID and with the other money, has trusted me to do what I say I'm going to do, that money, it'll mostly be cold weather or hot weather. It's be very rare for it to be other things. The problem is that we would have to do separate MOUs for, you'd have to divvy it up, and there's no way to divvy it up Lisa. There's no way to do that. It's like I got a call tonight about an Afghanistan refugee. I mean, how are you?
So there's no way to earmark it, that's what it's for? Because I thought the
No,
program.
well, it was in the beginning. And then I did that for the first two amounts of money you gave me. Then we had money left, and then we left it for emergency housing. I'm asking the council to trust that our agency, who has a long record with this city, that we will use it mostly for weather. It is a
Yeah,
fine.
I'm saying I'm not in support of that. I
Well,
understand
that's
what
fine.
you're saying.
And
I'm
I
not in
appreciate
support
what
of
you're
that.
saying, but I can't say 5% is going to be for, I don't know when the police are going to call me or the hospital's going to call me and say, house someone. I
And when-
cannot delineate.
Yeah,
that
when
we're gonna
funds
put
are, when
10%
funds are
for one.
allocated through like the HERA's money that we allocate.
Okay, again,
then
as I-
then that would be open to whatever you use it
As I
for.
told Councilmember Smith when he brought this up before, that's a separate issue. I write a separate grant for that,
Mm-hmm.
and that goes for housing and for utilities,
Okay.
not for putting people into lodging.
Yeah.
It's not even allocated for that. Those are two separate grants, which I think I explained the last time when I asked you guys to give me
Yeah.
the additional monies. I understand your opposition, I respect it, but I'm saying that it holds my hands in regard to the rare occasions, and it is a rare occasion, that we need to use emergency lodging in regard to other things. If we just do it we had hot weather, and thank goodness that you guys gave me that money, the additional monies to do hot weather. I mean, if you make it so specific, it makes it very difficult for an agency, and we don't spend that much money on other kinds of things. I'm just saying, from a practical stand of view,
I
a
know it would
memorandum of
be easier.
understanding.
I know it would be easier and your hands would be less tied, but I am 100% in support of supporting the original program that we came up with.
That's
If
fine.
we needed
I
funds
appreciate
for
that.
something else, come back and ask for something else. But I
Well,
would
that's-
like to keep those
Well, I appreciate
separated.
that, and I'm here to appeal to the council to make it emergency lodging and trust our long track record of doing that appropriately, mostly because of cold weather, and not making it so difficult in regard to writing up a memorandum of understanding. And please keep the Harris thing out of it completely, because they're two separate things, as I told Councilmember Smith, who's not here
I
tonight, the
know,
last time.
But to me, cold weather and other issues like domestic violence are also very separate things. That was my point. Those
I
are
think
separate things.
emergency lodging as a city, with a tiny percent of that being in regard to domestic violence or the Afghanis, the guy who came to me tonight, I think if we can umbrella that and you respect our agency enough with our track record, that'll be fine. And if you want me to separate them, I can separate them. I can't give you their names, but it's going to be obvious. If the weather is, really cold like it was starting in October, when I come to report or send a report every month, it's going to be mostly cold weather. If you want me to separate out and say we did all the cold weather and then 2 domestic violence victims or other victims, I can easily do that.
I think that's really important. And the reason why I think that's important is because we've increased the funding significantly. And as we've increased the funding, we've also broadened the scope. And if we want to look at problem solving around something, we really have to know what is this money being used for. And if we don't know what the money is being used for, we need to narrow the scope and ask specifically for what is needed.
I'd be happy to do that. If it's cold, it's going to be cold weather. If it's cold and there's 2
Yeah, but
domestic
violence happens in cold weather, it happens
I
in
know.
hot weather.
You're-
Refugees come in
you're not
cold weather,
listening to-
refugees
You're not
come in hot
listening to me
weather.
finish what I'm saying. If it's cold weather and we have domestic violence or someone that's referred from the hospital, I can say there are 30 cold weather people and 2 domestic violence and 2 people who come from the hospital, which is very, very rare. It's a small percentage. I'm asking that it be emergency lodging because it's simpler when you do a memorandum of understanding. I'm asking that the council trust that I'm going to use it mostly for weather, but not have to come and, like the fire department's helping me right now because I've already used all the money that was allocated. And then the $2,000 or so you gave me, I used for hot weather, actually, mostly, and 1 domestic violence. I can pull those stats. I can easily do that.
I think that's vital, because
Okay,
as we
that's fine.
spend more and more and more money, and we need to problem solve around what can we do besides throw money at it.
We're not
we
throwing
have
money
to
at.
have- We have.
We're not
But
throwing.
if we're looking at this as an issue, if we're looking at this as we started off spending 10,000 and then 15,000, then 20,000, then 30,000, or we keep going.
Well, it was
and
10
we want,
and then 20 this last time.
If-
And then the last 2,000 or so was left for me to use at my discretion.
if we continue to give more and more money, we have to have the data to problem solve.
And I have,
Because
I
we
provided that
want to
data.
put money towards preventative action.
I understand that. I can't prevent weather or
I know you
domestic
can't
violence.
prevent weather,
And-
but the money isn't just being used for weather. That's my point.
It wasn't until you allocated the last little bit of that money for me to use it for something else. It was used for weather until I abided by the MOU, until I asked you to say, okay, we got $2,500 left, can we use it otherwise? I respect your opinion, I just disagree with it. I think it would be easier, and I ask that you trust what we have done for 43 years, and with tens of thousands of dollars, including COVID money, which I can account for, and you make it just a little easier than trying to find, as I said, we spent all the money that was used by you guys, from you guys, and then I went to the fire department to get what we needed for the rest, including hot weather. So,
I would just add on top of that point, I'm on board with the scope expansion to cover everything, emergency housing or lodging in general. My kind of question would be along the one I had previously, the same point. I to respect privacy, obviously I wouldn't have flagged in their files necessarily, but
Of
if there's a way we could just have a count with this,
We
then
can.
I'm fine with the expansion.
We can. We can.
Perfect, thank you. Councilmember Todd.
Yes, I have a question and 2 quick comments. My question is, because I'm new to all of this, what Councilmember Schneider was saying about the cold weather, typically there are steps to see if there is other housing available.
always.
Is that also the case when there is a call for domestic violence or
Yes.
things like that? Okay.
If the police call me for, and there's not that
a
many
last
domestic
resort type
violence issues through the year.
Right.
I'm using that as an example. But just like this was the first time I've had an Afghani refugee who I literally received a call in an hour ago from a police officer who needed housing. So these are very small times that this happens. Why I'm asking to change the MOU is for emergency lodging. Can I report it's cold weather? Well, common sense will dictate when I come to the council, every time I come, that it's going to mostly be cold weather. Or I would suggest hot weather, because we went through a really difficult time this summer. I can do that. I can do it. I can make those designations. I can provide that information. I'm just trying to make it a little bit more simplistic, so I don't have to come to the council and say, can I have $2,000 for domestic violence when I may or may not need it? Or, $350 for an Afghani refugee, or we have someone that's housed because of the hospital right now, or a week's stay for the hospital. It is tedious. It is difficult to report. I mean, if I have to come every council meeting and tell you what I'm doing, that's crazy. And it's mostly weather-related.
Yeah.
We set this up because a guy died, and I was there through this whole steps of this, and the entire city, I literally called the chiefs and said, nobody's going to die in our city. The chiefs will tell you that. And how can we make it? And I reestablished a relationship with the American Inn, which no agency that I'm aware of houses people in a hotel. Not only do we house them in a hotel when we put them there, but we give them food, and through the stay, the long terms of stay, because the weather was so cold, we provided them ways to do their laundry. I personally sent quarters over so they could do their laundry. It's a much more extensive thing. I think we've more than been accountable, but if I need to be more accountable, that's fine. And I don't mind doing that. It's easily done. I've been doing this for 18 years. It's just, I don't want it to be so difficult that I have to come and say, here's this for domestic violence when I don't know. Here's what I need for an Afghani refugee, which I don't know. Here's what I need for somebody from the from the hospital, which I don't know, which we have someone there. I'm just asking, if you allocate funds, whatever they are, that you make the memorandum of understanding emergency lodging, which requires you to have trust in me that I will do that right. And if you have any questions in regard to that, you can come to my office right across the street, and I'll tell you what I spent the money on.
Thanks. So, yeah, and just to reiterate, my understanding is, yes, it's the same process, whether it's cold weather or
Doesn't matter.
whatever.
Doesn't matter.
So
Same
then my
paperwork.
two comments are, I am in support of making the MOU for emergency lodging, as long as there is some sort of data tracking with that. And in large part, that's also because I do think it's important for us to recognize, there might be certain issues that are growing at a faster rate than others.
Absolutely.
And I think that would be important to note. And just like Councilmember Schneider said, we can maybe then look at those issues and come up with preventative solutions or education around that. And then also, as much as we all trust in you, if for some reason you are no longer in that position and someone else is, I want to make sure that they have that data and a system in place that they can continue
Same
to track
system.
that as well.
We use the MAC system.
Okay.
It's
Thank
called
you.
MAC. And so we track every bit of every dollar we spend everywhere. And if I need to separate the receipts from the American Inn, and sometimes if they have a dog, we have to put them somewhere else because they don't, aside from that cat situation I shared with you, we can also go to other hotels. I can keep separate files on that because the other files will be this big as compared to weather-related kinds of things, which is why it would, to me, at least to me, it makes it more sense that we allow for it to be emergency lodging rather than have a whole bunch of separate MOUs, which I literally could not identify how much I need for each of those little unusual incidents, like the Afghani refugee, which the chief could confirm. I'm not making this up. Someone named Mike, probably one of his officers, didn't tell me his last name, got him over at the American Inn tonight.
Councilmember Stokes, please.
First off, I think what you do is really important, and I think you're an angel on earth. But I do have a couple questions just because I'm not as familiar with your agency. Where else do you receive funding besides the city?
Oh, well, we get grants, and there's faith-based community, individuals. We are not state or federally funded. The fact that this city has allowed us to do this is very unique. My budget this last year is $193,000, and then you guys gave me a bunch of money, and we saved a whole bunch of people. And another thing to think about was from being on the street. For those who are not familiar with what we do with the monies we're talking about right now, if these people end up on a corner, they're going to end up at North Kansas City Hospital. They're going to be taxpayer dollars, and which is one of the reasons, beyond just the humanitarian part of this, the economic value of keeping people in a place until they can get to a better place or not freeze to death on the street and end up in a hospital, which they can't pay the bill at, and it's a not-for-profit hospital. I mean, there's a lot of things that are important about that.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely
Yeah.
a lot of need, and I just am a little nervous that it's a slippery slope. If we just, because we have increased funding several times since I've even been on council, and so I just want to make sure that we are being good stewards of not that we don't trust you. I think you're amazing, and I think your agency is doing a great job.
I didn't ask for $20,000 the last time I came before you. We went through $10,000 in about a second because of how cold it was in October. So it is not like I come here and go, oh, please give me more money, more money. Matter of fact, I asked for $10,000 the last time I came here. And I think it might have been even Councilmember Smith who said, let's just not make Rita come here every day, and then gave 20. So it's my job, obviously, to raise money for my agency, but that's not even it. This is not something my agency could even do without the support of the city, which is how I started off this conversation. There is no other, you guys need to take a lot of pride in yourself for taking care of people in cold or hot weather from the monies you gave me and the last little bit of money in domestic violence and being stranded, or the hospital calling me. You all need to be real proud of yourself for that. If you want to continue to do that, that's fine. If you don't want to continue to do that, that's fine. If we're not funded, it's not going to happen. I do not have the resources to make that happen. I am the only full-time person in my agency. Every can of food, Every dollar that comes through there is on my back. The fact that a few years ago, when I took the initiative to meet with the chiefs and say, this is not going to happen, and reestablish a relationship with the American Inn because the city was also concerned, I take a lot of pride in that. It took a lot of work. It took a lot of diligence to make that happen, and we have it happening. And I think, as I said again, Councilmember Schneider, very little do we do domestic violence or other kinds of things. It's mostly weather.
I'm
But-
not against helping people with domestic violence. I threw that out there because what you threw out there.
I'm not saying
but
that.
I'm-
I cannot
I
differentiate
am
the funds. That's fine. You can disagree with me, but we can't do it in two. Here's money for cold weather, here's money for domestic
You said you
violence.
Yeah,
can't
and-
differentiate the funds?
No,
What
I
what
can.
I'll say is this.
I'm just saying
I-
you can't do two MOUs. We
Hold
need
on.
one MOU.
Hold on, let me bring this back together here. I think the ask isn't really to give $1,000 for one type of issue, another 1,000 for, I understand that that's very burdensome. I think the ask overall here is really just to kind of submit that data on the back end of it. How you use it, whatever's within the contract you're allowed to use. But on the
Right.
back end, would just like to have that information. I don't think anyone's suggesting really sub-allocating and having a bunch
Well-
of contracts with a bunch of individual buckets. Well,
I think what I'm
The side-
suggesting is that
the
you
overall
have
meeting.
helped people that suffer, that are here as refugees prior to the city helping to fund this program. The cold weather program is very specific. And prior to that, were you unable to help
Many
people that were
times.
suffering from domestic violence
Many
or
times. Many times.
refugees?
We don't-
Because the specific,
No, we don't have the funding for it.
so you weren't able to
I
help.
told you, we're a very small agency. We do as best as we can. I told you what our budget is. The fact that we're able to expand services that we can is because this city has decided cold weather for 2 grants and a little bit for the other grant, and the fire department for the other grant, to take care of people if they find themselves in our city in a place where they might need emergency shelter.
Okay, so in general, I'm just going to ask council, one, I'm assuming council's good with continuing some form of program, right? I do think we all have great appreciation for what you've been doing, and it has done a lot of good work for folks in the community. The ultimate question for council is, are you good with expanding the scope? And then I know Councilmember Alvarez has something to say.
Just real quick,
you as well.
I know that in the past, I have called you from the police department before, and very grateful that you've been there and provided a place in all kinds of circumstances. So I think you do a great service to the city. Your track record, I think, does show something, but I understand what they're saying also is to keep track of everything, but I think you do that already by a paper trail of where the money goes, so I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, you can come to my office anytime and see. And if I indicate someone who's in a hotel for homeless, on their paperwork, it'll say homeless.
But
I
do have a-
cannot indicate domestic violence, although I could, to make,
I do have-
Councilmember Schneider more comfortable, I could report the 1 or 2 incidents a month
I do
that
have
might happen.
a question, though. If you have only a certain amount for cold weather and then a domestic violence comes in, can you not take money from one to use for the other? No? Okay,
What I'm asking is,
yeah.
that the city provide emergency lodging, which will be 95 or more % for cold weather, which is what it was established for. I'm asking them to expand that to emergency lodging. We are not going to take, and I can provide every month if we spent it in other things than
Yeah,
cold weather.
because you keep a record of
I
where it
can,
goes.
I can provide that for you.
Okay.
It's easily tracked. I can easily set those files aside from cold weather. But this last amount of monies, aside from the monies that I was going to have them write a check for, because we didn't spend all of the $30,000, and I came before this council and said, could we use this just for emergency lodging? And they said, yes, and we did not write a check. I was prepared to have a check written, but we didn't. But what I was thinking at that time is emergency lodging, which is, I literally could look up if someone needs me to give you the exact percentage. I would say it's well over 96% of what we did during the cold weather. And then when I had the other monies, I used it for hot weather and a couple other things. And then we ran out of that money, and I contacted the fire department, and God bless them, they gave me another $1,000 to house the people we're housing right now. We're not housing the refugee on your money right now. We're not housing the person who has to go into a rehab facility because they need some help from the hospital. We're doing that from the fire department money right now. I have been very accountable for what our agency, well, me, because I am the agency, frankly, accountable for what you have given me the money for, and came before you and said, I will have the person who can write you a check for the remaining balance of that, write you a check, and appealed to you to allow me to use that for, well, it ended up hot weather and a couple of other things. And there's only a couple $1,000s left in that ability.
Councilmember Clark.
Rita, we all respect you. We all love you. We appreciate what you're doing. No, truly. It is our job, though, to ask hard questions.
Yep.
Nobody's coming after you.
Oh, I appreciate that.
We're so for you. We're so for this program. I think right now, though, I know it hits me every year when the cold weather's coming. I'm like, I'm worried. Like, where are people going to sleep? And I think from my perspective, I just want us to prioritize the cold weather emergency funding for cold weather emergency housing because it's coming. What I don't want to see is potentially, you have to come back in and go, guess what? I had so many potentially domestic violence. I'm not saying, but we don't know, right? We can't predict any of this. That we want to prioritize this to say, we don't want people to die in our city, ever, or anywhere. Kick them across the bridge, oh, look, it's cancer. But that we want to prioritize that first, and that we can delineate this is cold weather emergency, and that you can put like maybe DV, just so we know, because that could be a whole nother group that's out there that says we specialize and we're developing another, shelter situation for domestic violence specifically. That's why it's so important. And we want to have this like strong judicious use of funds to say we have to delineate that information. And it's not a distrust, it's anywhere. It's like what we have to do so that we're kind of checking our own balances. That's it.
Well, and I appreciate that, Councilman Clark, but again, the only money I've spent from the money that you gave me was the last couple $1,000s for domestic violence. And we keep talking domestic violence. We do not get that many calls for domestic violence. The majority of the money has gone, well, all of it went to cold weather until I appealed to you for the 2,000. Then it went to hot weather. 90% of it did. I guess it doesn't really matter to me how the council does this, and I think we all have the same agenda. We want to keep people, but it's just a matter of how many MOUs do we want to do?
Yep.
Or do we just want to do cold weather? If we just want to do cold weather, don't care about hot weather, don't care about domestic violence, I'll attempt to find another resource for it, that's fine. But if you choose to give money, there's going to be a memorandum of understanding, and to me, it makes more sense for emergency lodging. Since most 95 or more, no, more than that, about 95% or more of that is hot or cold weather. So however you guys want to do it. I know y'all want to keep people okay. I'm just saying it's easier if we do it in this way.
Councilmember Stokes.
I mean, would it be a possibility to say you can spend this much money of the MOU or whatever it is, like $5,000 of it, or up to this much on other things that are not cold weather related? Or, I mean, I know that's tying your hands again, but I just want to make sure we are allotting it correctly and not, because we do want it for cold weather. Like that was the objective of the program.
And perhaps hot weather given this last season, because we put people in hotels because it was 100 and some odd degrees and they could die in their camps. So you figure it out. Maybe weather if you're not happy with emergency lodging.
Councilmember Snyder.
Yes. I think it's unfair to say we don't care about groups of people. That's not it.
I did not say
But,
you did not care about groups of people. I want that to be on the
last
record.
thing that I'm going to say about it is that the council decided how we were going to deal with cold weather emergencies was through emergency housing when all other things were done. To decide how are we going to handle domestic violence, how are we going to handle refugees, how are we going to handle any other subset, we haven't decided, we're going to handle that through emergency housing and putting people in hotels. We haven't, that's not a decision that we've made. So if that's the route we want to go, I think we need to have more conversation about it with people that do this regularly for a living, because it may not be, it may be the best use of funds, it may not be the best use of funds, I don't know. But the cold weather plan that was created was well thought out. And I am not saying I want to abandon other people. I'm just saying, if we're going to allocate city funds, if we decide as a city, this is how we want to deal with these situations, then it needs to be well thought out, just like it was for cold weather.
I would suggest if you're going to go that direction, that you do weather-related, period, because we put people in when it was 104 degrees and you could fry on the sidewalk. We also put people in hotels, not just cold weather. Maybe weather-related, if you're not going to do it in a more general kind of thing, as a compromise.
All right, what do we got? What do we want? What does council want to see here? Is council good with, the ultimate question here, is council good with expanding the scope? Councilmember Todd. Or someone wanting to make a motion to expand the scope, and then we can see where a vote lands on expanding scope. Or if no one makes a motion, then
I don't know that I'm going to make a motion yet, but I guess I will after this statement, because I would be in favor of one of two things. One would be to expand the scope, to say emergency funding, with the caveat that it's tracked and we can look at that data, understanding that things might change based on the data. Or I liked the idea of having sort of a cap of like, this is the total amount of funding with a certain percentage or a certain cap that can be used for emergency funding versus this amount for weather-related or cold weather. So I would be in favor of either one of those.
okay. Now we're all doing what I said we weren't doing.
Exactly.
Further comments?
I feel like we're in cold weather right now. I mean, we're approaching the cold weather. It's not cold yet, but we're approaching the cold weather season, and I just feel like allocating the funds to that specifically would be my highest priority.
But I think it's also good to have one MOU as well, and to have one kind of pot of money to work through instead of having several irons in the fire at the same time as well. So I do think there's probably some benefit in having an annual contract that covers a larger scope of items. Councilman Fitzgerald.
Just to add my 2 cents from, I've done some, it's kind of outside work, but audit work on small nonprofits, and I've seen that accounting for a number of restricted funds can be burdensome. So from that perspective, I wouldn't be opposed to expanding the MOU for at least, for a year and get the data at the end and see where the funds are actually being allocated. I think at the end of the day, it sounds like these funds are going for good reasons, and the vast majority is going to still be cold weather. So maybe for, ease of helping this organization through another year, try expanding it and see how you get that data and see what it looks like after 1 year would be my suggestion. Motion, I guess.
I guess you're going to direct staff to bring back an MOU with those things in it is going to be the ultimate. And then maybe you're going to take my second question here.
Is it what the contract amount is for?
A funding question. That was my next question. And at what level do we want to fund this year? Last year we budgeted.
Last year it was funded at 30. That was several MOUs added up together.
And then that was
The fiscal year we're currently in, remember, we kind of put a placeholder number for this conversation that we're having today. So you have the budget authority currently up to 40,000.
okay. And so that includes fee and everything, right? So it's like 20
correct.
some thousand plus whatever, yeah, fee. Perfect. Funding question.
May I comment
Well,
on
I
the
guess
funding?
Yeah, please go
Mayor?
ahead.
40,000 is too much. We spent 30,000 in the MOUs, the 2 MOUs, and then the little bit amount that we had after that. And then we had the fire department's community thing. We do not need $40,000. I can't believe I'm saying this as an executive director of an organization. That would be excessive, given the scope of what we do. That'd be excessive. I think the 30,000 we spent exactly as we said. As a matter of fact, I have right in front of me on the 23rd of August, we spent the last of that for 548 room nights for $52 a night, approximately. That was the 30,000, and keep in mind, 5% administrative cost, which is only $1,500 for us to do the paperwork. I do not believe, at this juncture, and with my experience in this business, we need a $40,000 ask. I don't. $30,000 we spent, all but $2,000 for cold, and then a chunk of that for hot, and a few $100s of that for assorted other things. So weirdly and oddly enough, I find myself in front of a council saying, I don't need as much money as you've allocated because it's not appropriate. I don't know that maybe next year we can, but I don't think it's appropriate at this point in time.
You ever thought about being a developer? I'd like
Yeah.
more of them asked.
No, I got enough on my plate. I know. I'm going to have to tell my board, I said, no, I don't want 40,000. I'm asking for 30, and I'm asking for it to be a general MOU. That's what I'm asking. And as you said, Councilmember Fitzgerald, having had some experience in what I do, it does make it a lot easier, and I can still be accountable for the fact that most of that money, and I don't want it to just say cold weather because we also did hot weather. If you want to make it weather-related, make it weather-related, or whatever you want to do. But I'm still saying it's easier, as Councilmember Fitzgerald with some experience in my field said, it does make it easier, and I will be accountable for any city council member who comes into my office. My files are open.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to take this one step at a time here. We'll start with the item question here, and I'm going to have Connor kind of clarify that motion again so everyone knows where we're at here.
I guess I would propose a motion to approve the MOU expanded for emergency lodging for the 1-year period,
Well,
but also to include, provided to city council data on the split on the uses of those funds.
I'd clarify, be a direction of staff, not an approval of the MOU, because we don't have an MOU. Yeah, there. He affirmed what I said. Okay. There's the motion on that, and no matter what happens here, we can continue to discuss or vote on other arrangements or whatever council wants. But there is that. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it. I'll second it.
I heard lots of them. Councilmember Alvarez was one, I believe. You got a second in there? Okay. There we go. First, second, we all clear on what we're voting on here. We good? All right. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed, say no.
No.
Motion carries. I heard more yeses than nos.
Yeah, it was just me.
And now we go to the dollar funding question. And this would be with an expanded scope. What dollar figure would council want to approve?
I believe she's asking for 30, and that's what we spent last time,
30,
right?
30, 30, 30, 30. We
There was a question of clarification over
Oh,
here. I'm
sorry.
going to say out loud on the microphone. What if it's a very warm winter? We're all out here in shorts all the months long.
If it's 120 degrees, we might still be using it.
But I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
So knowing that we really wanted to focus it on really cold weather, that's where we're hitting, because we know, as to Councilmember Schneider's point, in the hot weather there are public places to go to escape the heat. You can go in public spaces. There's air conditioning to escape the heat, and then at night it's generally not going to be 104 at night. I have slept in a tent in those conditions and I survived, but it was dry heat. It's a curiosity to say, so where does that money then go if it's if it's not so cold outside? And I think it's just like that clarity that everybody wants.
May I
Yes.
address that issue?
We can use that in the MOU as well. I was going to ask.
So in
That's what we did last time.
previous MOUs, any unspent monies is to be remitted at the end of the city's fiscal year.
Sure. Which goes
Which
to your
I-
point
which-
when you said, hey, guys,
Which
this
is
is what I
said,
use, this is what I didn't use.
$2,500, I'll write you, or I won't write you a check, but
Right.
someone will write you a check. So
Sure.
it's not like we're going to keep the money and use it on other things. And that will be written into the MOU, which was the last MOU, I think, of the 3 that we did. So I can't predict the weather.
Yep.
I can't predict the circumstances. I really appreciate the fact that you guys are going to make this MOU a whole lot easier. Then y'all can figure out what that money's going to be, and I'll stand here until you tell me so I can tell my board.
30,000. There we go. See,
Yeah.
I won't even take a vote if we're seeing a bunch of head nods here. Oh, there we go. I saw a thumbs up as well. We will take
Thumbs
that.
up
Yeah,
for
there is
30.
no disapproval from council on that. We'll go that route. 30,000.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And again, as I said in the beginning, I think we might be the only city that pays attention to these issues. And I want you to know that how important it is that we do this. And Councilmember Schneider, it's almost all weather related. So if you're worried about other kinds of things, it's nice that I can also be able to take care of that and not have to contact the fire department and look for other sources because we're a small agency. I think the city should be very proud of itself for taking care of the people who come here and need help. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate you.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Next item number, consent agenda. It is the consent agenda, and I remind everyone that item number 17 was removed. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Now we get to skip around here a little bit. Regular items, number 18, license agreement for Cameron Building at 1606 Lynn Street, bill number 7804, ordinance number 9601. This is substantially similar to, we've done what, how many of these now? We've done 4 of these to be on other buildings. Pretty clear, the intent here is just to give us a better view of the city, I'll say. Is there further questions on this ordinance? If not, is there a motion for first reading?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Okay, bear with me, I didn't bring my glasses. An ordinance adopting and approving a license agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and Armor District LLC regarding placement of city equipment on roof of property generally located at 1606 Lynn Street in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
I move that bill number 7804 be placed on second and final reading and passes ordinance number 9601.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
An ordinance adopting and approving a license agreement by and between the City of North Kansas City, Missouri and Armor District LLC regarding placement of city equipment on roof of property generally located at 1606 Lynn Street in the City of North Kansas City, Missouri.
Item number 19, honorary street naming policy. I'll call on Mike for this one.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Based on discussion and the request at the September 5th meeting, talked about it and thought it'd be good to provide some guidelines for future requests should they come. Kind of looked at what some other cities do around the nations regarding honorary street naming and put what was attached with the agenda together. It has a fee of $300. In talking with Public Works, we thought that's an adequate fee. It's not too much, but it'll cover the cost, not only of the sign, the post, but an amount of labor to handle that. It does include written consent, if possible, from a family member. Thought being that it could very well be that a group asked for it, but the family thinks, you know what, they wouldn't want that, or they weren't, they didn't want their name and stuff like that. So we thought that was a good thing to add in there. And then as well as it's a 10-year limit. Signs were out, but thought, and that was something that saw in multiple accounts and more thought about it. Thought, that's not a bad. It's not a forever thing. It's a 10-year honorary naming. So main thing is if there's any questions or concerns with what's being presented tonight.
I guess my first one, so we would allow just an unlimited quantity of these. There's no annual limit. There's no, right?
Right. I mean, there hadn't been a limit put on it. I mean, it does require, that one, they're deceased.
That was going to be my other question.
Yes. Also that they made a significant contribution to the city of North Kansas City. We've highlighted, whether it's cultural, humanitarian, or a historic achievement. So
Well,
there's still an approval process.
yeah,
that
to the
would-
deceased portion, I mean, I would have a preference to remove that. I'm not sure we necessarily always have to wait for someone to die before we can recognize them. But that's just more of a personal preference to me, but
Yeah.
whatever council wants on that one. My other question, I guess, is related to why 10 years. So at 10 years, the sign would be removed? Is that,
Correct. They'd have the option to renew if they wanted to. It was just something I found that it wasn't uncommon, and
okay.
I kind of threw it out there to see if it sticks. I mean,
And then what would happen, like, if the sign was lost or stolen? Do we have any idea on, would we just eat that? And
no. We haven't,
I was just
put in there
curious.
whether or not, they would have to pay for
it's
it.
gone
Or city
forever.
funds would take care of that.
Just curious. What other questions we got? Who else got something? Someone's got to have something here. And there's a lot of appetite for this question here, I can tell. Fine, I'll keep going then. Councilmember, now, hold on, now I got to ask my next question. How do we keep track of these sort of policies or resolutions in general on a staff side? Because, like, I have no real insight into, like, we use this Roberts modified rules here now, but that was like in a resolution from like 1970-something. If I didn't have Laserfish and the ability to search for this, I'd have no idea that was even a policy in existence. How do we track this, and how do we track this in a way that the public can see our policies and resolutions?
We track them through the city clerk. And then as far as, I would think, I haven't had the talk, but something that could be incorporated with GIS or, as far as where they're located, or find some way to.
I figure would
make
be
it
able to
available.
track the signs. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I mean, mine is just as we pass policies and resolutions like this, they tend to get lost with the people that write them or are part of passing them, and it gets harder to track as time goes on. So just curious how we plan on
We can,
we
we
do
could
more
put them
policies.
on the website if
Right.
people wanted them out
where
there.
these sort of
Or I can build a spreadsheet if you would like.
a spreadsheet.
Good at those.
Oh, I love spreadsheets.
We could very easily put these in GIS as well.
I can't wait. I'm kidding. What are now, Councilmember Safer?
Yes, I would like to add the section saying that if the sign is stolen, damaged, or whatever, that the original sponsors be responsible for replacing it, maybe through paying another fee.
Okay. Further comments?
If I
Question.
may add one item
Who's
to
that?
what
Uh-oh.
you guys were discussing earlier, how we tracking it. Because we are charging a fee, if we were to establish a fee table, and likely there should be an application process. I'm not saying ComDev is handling this. I'm not volunteering my department. However, oh, darn it, too quick. However, because there is an application process and there shall be a review process, and we charge people for covering these costs, and so there should be liability and all that attached to it. So we currently do have an InterGov system. You guys heard this name before. That is our current permitting and application software that we're using for all of these applications. So this will be one of that type of application. This is how we track in the system.
Can I
And
ask
so
one-
then you'll have the expiration, sorry.
Go ahead.
Then you have the expiration date in the application that you can set. Say if it is approved January 1st, 2024, you can set 10 years,
Oh,
January 1st,
yeah,
2034.
that's a good one as well.
34. So this way, it will come up as you'll see, oh, these are the expired ones, we shall go take them down. But then I don't know if there is conflict, say, if it is an honorary street over at one location, then if there's a second application to come while this one is still inactive, what shall we do? Anyway, I feel like I'm opening a bigger can of worms.
Now I got some hands. Now we're moving. There we go. Now, Councilmember Snyder.
I agree that I would remove the, you have to be deceased. I mean, I don't think we're going to get like a flood of people trying to name streets, but if there is an exceptional person that the community would really like to name a street after that's still alive, I would say, there you go, like Crystal. I would say, let's do it while she's around, I just, mostly probably it would be people who are deceased, but I wouldn't make that a rule. And I understand the 10-year thing, because I think a lot of times, especially like in my hometown, you'll go through and it'll be an honorary street, and like my parents' generation doesn't know who it's been named after. So unless we do something to keep that alive, I understand the 10 years and then, we do a reset and maybe somebody applies to continue that street. That would be a lovely thing. But that also makes sense to me.
Further comments? All right. What all you want on this?
Well, what I have, just to verify, the comments made were adding in language if stolen or damaged, that to the effect that the applicant or sponsor will be responsible for replacing the sign. And then removing the deceased requirement and leaving the 10 years. But as far as changes to what's there right now would be adding in that language and then removing the deceased requirement.
And I closed the thing too fast here, so I'm going to ask a question that I know is in the memo.
Mm-hmm.
$300, that covers one sign,
Double-sided sign, the brackets.
one double-sided sign,
to-
the
to
bracket.
mount it on
So if they
top.
want two signs,
Yeah.
then they'll pay, or if there's room for, because I think it
Right,
contemplated having
it's
up
one
to two
sign
signs.
per.
Oh, it's one sign per block.
Yeah, and it
Never
has
mind,
in there
okay.
where they
If
figure
that's
out the
one per block.
cost.
Okay, then that maxes that out.
Number of signs times 300.
300 is one, okay,
That's
300 block.
per sign.
Okay, and that's, as you said, more than covers the cost of
Correct.
the sign and staff. Okay. Is that what we want to have brought back? There we go. She pointed over here. Who do we? You look uncertain. No? Yes? Councilmember Stokes.
I understand Councilmember Schneider's argument about the deceased part, but I also feel like it's more of a memorial or an honor for these people, and I feel like it's not that difficult to pay $300 and name it Mayor Bryant DeLong Way, So I just feel like maybe that's like a great, but I'm just very torn. I don't really have a very strict one way or the other, but I just wanted to share my thoughts with you.
I guess on that is maybe when you need to start looking at expanding what the criteria is, because as I kind of look at the criteria, it is still fairly broad, and so it could lead to that sort of situation. And how do you determine, what is of significance? Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Just for clarification, if, say, somebody applies for a sign, does that go to council for approval, or what's the step before that's finalized?
First, it comes through my office, and then no matter what, then it would come to council for final approval. I guess, administration would see if it meets the guidelines and all, and everything. Look at where it's to be placed and make sure everything's in line, and then bring it to council for approval. So the ultimate approval takes council action.
There'd be some sort of vote or,
Mm-hmm.
okay, gotcha.
Councilmember Saper.
I lived in a city once where it seemed like every other block had an honorary street name. And I don't think there was any kind of sunset clause like we're proposing here. That would have been nice. But the proliferation of those kinds of designations soon lose any impact that they have on the people who are actually going by the street, live here, know about it. And I would like to keep the deceased part in as a memorial and honorary that way, rather than have every other block be named for someone, mostly maybe still all alive. And that's my thinking on that. I would like to keep the deceased in there as a memorial.
Trying to get him a street. No, we can't.
You're not getting a street.
I said you. I was trying to get you one. Councilmember Schneider.
I just want to say thank you for speaking up, Councilman Stokes, because I could tell that there was something there. I could see that side too. I'm not like 100% doubling down on anything. I can see that point of view as well. And we could tell by Taylor Swift Street that if there was something special and super temporary, we could obviously do that at any time we wanted.
Or we don't have to take any action there. There's another option. What do we want to do? What do we got? Further comments?
No, not yet.
We're all for dead over here. No, I mean, just because. I mean, I love the sound of Clark Drive, but no. I mean, and I'm sure you guys would pass it. I know, but let me die first. Just not soon. Oh, yeah, we've already got Clark Ferguson, thanks, but it doesn't have an E at the end.
Although we have Liz Ryan Hall, we've already named as well.
Oh, gosh, wait a minute. She's living amongst us. No, but it's not a street, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of curious, because initially this started, what I'd sent you was just a naming policy in general. Is there not a desire to, I guess, come up with guidelines for all sorts of scenarios around naming policy?
Yeah, at this point, I tackled the request from September 5th. I mean, instead of delving into buildings and facilities and whatnot, I thought, the immediate thing, one, they had made the request. It sounded like there was support. So it was getting something in front of you all to basically be able to make it, move forward or not with that. But, right, there's also, I think the original draft talked about facilities and whatnot.
Further, council member, so what do you have down so far? What were your view?
Well, I think the question is deceased or not being a requirement.
Sounds like deceased was it. We'll go that route. Deceased.
Okay, so that's what's in there.
But we love Ryan Hall.
10
Don't question that.
10 years, leaving the time frame for 10 years.
10 years, yes.
And then adding in the language for if stolen or damaged for that.
Yes.
So really, as a policy, Tom, could it, be a motion with?
Well, back when I go to how do we track these things? Would it not be appropriate to have a resolution for items like this? Would that not make sense for tracking and record
Well, that'd be
purposes?
the big thing then, bring back with those changes, a resolution.
Yeah, I'd bring back a resolution with those changes.
All right.
And then I think
Everybody
we'll have a
thumbs
little
up on
better
that?
There you go. I felt the thumbs up. I could feel it rushing through the crowd there. Item number 20, approving accounts due and payables by the city through September 29, 2023. Bill number 7805, ordinance number 9602.
First reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say yes. All opposed, say no. Motion carries.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through September 29th, 2023.
I move that bill number 7805 be placed on second and final reading and pass as ordinance number 9602.
Second. Okay.
Did you get the second there?
I did.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
An ordinance authorizing payment for certain accounts due and payable by the city through September 29th, 2023.
21 staff comments.
All right, have the items submitted with the packet. Did add in there kind of the start of the thought process for the community center. It gives you some history, the original agreement, as well as some of the finances. But again, this was the next meeting. We'll have a discussion item on it. But this was just to get the information in front of you over the next 2 weeks. Should you have any questions, please reach out. Then also, Chief Freeman, Shu, and Nick have some items tonight. I'll start with Chief.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. The police department would like to propose a pilot program that includes a referral incentive for police officers. As you guys know, over the years, we continue to struggle with getting good quality candidates in our pool for hiring police officers. So we'd like to try to use this program to encourage our current employees to be active recruiters for our department. So if a current employee were to bring us a police officer and that police officer completes the academy and field training, then that current employee would be eligible to receive a $1,000 referral incentive. This would not require any additional funding sources. We would absorb the funding through our current salary line because, just for example, this year alone, for 3/4 of this year, we've had 2 vacancies. So we have unrealized salary money in that line that we would use to pay this off of. We have 2 current vacancies. We have 2 more that we know we will have in the next 6 months, and we are still struggling to find good quality applicants to do this job. So we want to use this pilot program as a way to empower our employees, like I said, to go be active recruiters for our department. If the council, is agreeable to this, we'll bring back a resolution, I would assume, at the next council meeting. Happy to answer any questions.
Bring it back. Oh, there, hold on.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions today. In the recent salary changes that we made, that did not include police and fire, correct?
Correct.
So how do you feel our police department is doing compared to other area police departments?
I think overall, okay. When we enacted our latest collective bargaining agreement with the FOP, our salary structure was at or near the top of the market. Now, within weeks, we had already been jumped over by other police departments. And now those weeks have turned into months and going on years. So we're about 1.5 years into the current contract. We have 1.5 years to go. Many police agencies have jumped up over us in salary. We're chasing each other around a tree, basically, for the best quality candidates because we're not the only ones having the problem. It's just difficult finding people that want to do public service and policing in general, fire department as well. I think we have a little bit more of a problem than Dave does. No offense, but so we're okay. Now we're going to need to do better when the next contract comes around.
Okay, and I'm in full support.
Thank you.
Bring it back.
Bring it back. Thank you.
That worked. Okay, what else you got?
Right. Okay. So community development is seeking for some answers, maybe from you, for guiding our future development along east side of Burlington. So it was up to recent that staff has received a few requests or questions about the future land use regarding to a conflict of existing zoning along Burlington, particularly on the east side. So currently, our zoning map, I'm not sure if everybody has seen it, but on the east side of Burlington, between 12th Avenue and 18th Avenue, they're particular zone M1, which stands for manufacturing 1 level. That is deviated from what we used to call it for mixed-use component. So that will restrict the future development for any mixed use, including residential components. So the questions staff has received were if they were to use for mixed uses and adapt the existing buildings, will the city support it? The reason for the property owners or agents asking that question is because currently the only way for them to allow mixed use is to go through a rezoning process. So at this point, staff would say the proper process for that we have established is to do a rezoning process, as what we typically would call that an entitlement process. It will go through a planning commission for public hearing, and then with the recommendation from planning commission come to city council for final approval. But staff would recommend us to go through the process of rezoning with a master plan. So in this case, we can establish the development standards and know exactly what product we're getting. Without a particular plan, when you're rezoning a particular property, you're essentially doing a spot zoning without a certain future that's being locked down to that area. So if that is what the city council have foreseen in the future, that we would allow more mixed use as recommended by our master plan for those areas on the east side of Burlington, I would like to get some head nods from you, or if we don't want to go down that route, if our route is to maintain what our industrial base is for North Kansas City, which is very important, and it is an essential base for North Kansas City. I would also like to know that from you all as well. Again, this problem probably will be solved once when we start to exercise our practice for updating our master plan, but just at this moment, with a lot of changes and adaptive use, we would like to hear some guidance from you.
So is there someone wanting to put an application in right now, you said?
Yes.
On which portion of Burlington?
I cannot tell you exactly where it is located at, but generally they're located on the east side of Burlington between, around 16th, 14th Avenue, over that area.
All in one, yeah. Let's see. Councilmember Saber.
Not to sound like a broken record, but I think it's premature to do this because we don't know what's going to be happening on the east of Burlington yet. There may be a baseball stadium in the offing in that area.
Let me clarify that. The area we're talking about is just one block from Burlington. So so in general, they're on the west side of Buchanan, like 1 to 2 block. They're not going to go over Swift Street.
But still, we need to hold off
Okay.
on that part of the master plan because it may need a lot of changes.
Yeah, and again, we'll update our master plan in 2025.
That's my thinking of that.
So,
I want to make sure I understand correctly. Someone owns the land and is going to request their property be rezoned, is that correct?
so somebody owns the land that's currently zoned M1, which would not allow any residential component to it, even including a mixed-use development. So if they want to bring, say, residential component to what they own right now, they'll have to go through a rezoning process because this is a use variance, and we cannot grant a use variance at this point. The proper way is to ask for a rezoning of the land which it belongs to for a current zoning district.
And if a rezoning is granted and we don't do the work to define what's required in that zone, is that what you're saying, is that it would be, they wouldn't have the parameters?
So rezoning processes usually have 2 different ways you can do it. You can do a rezoning without plan, which is just jumping from one zoning classification to another. They're not required to do anything. So this is a less favorite route because it's more advocating to a spot zoning. And in the history of zoning and rezoning, it happened before that people just doing rezoning without plan to increase the property value. Then they sell it, then they leave. So more important, we could do another route for rezoning. That is, we can do a rezoning require a plan, a master plan. So therefore, the rezoning comes with a particular plan, what they want to build, including the bulk item information, where the setback is going to be, what the use is going to be. So the plan is attached to the zoning component. However, a rezoning is a rezoning process. Once it's rezoned, it is rezoned. Say if it is rezoned from M1 to a C2, it is going to be a C2 forever, unless we revoke it back to rezone it back to M1. And that usually, if we don't get the consent from the property owner, it is a very lingering process itself.
I guess I'm just not sure what exactly we're head nodding here. I mean, it seems like the process would be they need to put in an application for what
Right.
they're trying to do.
I think we're trying to figure out, because staff has been asked, if the city would support some of the
I
change
guess
of
I have
the
to put in
use.
an application. Then you find out.
We can just direct.
Isn't that how that works, I think? I mean, that's the process.
We can direct the, so the reason we're asking is there are some gaps in our master plan. Our current master plan does not have a recommended future land use map for areas or for particular, corridors. But our current plan has recommended future uses for our characteristic area. So in our master plan, it's said very specific, the city shall guide and encourage mixed use along east side of Burlington. However, our zoning doesn't allow it. So this is like a conflict. It's existing there already. Unfortunately, I was not there when this master plan was completed, so I wasn't sure at that time what was discussed and how did the city landing on this conclusion that we would encourage the mixed use along East Burlington, while our current zoning is contradicting this guidance. So then we're seeking maybe.
Isn't that why we had the corridor overlay for a while, though?
Maybe that is one
Burlington
of the
corridor
reasons.
overlay? No, I mean, that was the whole function of that, I thought, was
Right.
to allow different uses within the overlay district. But I don't know. I didn't write that one either.
I'll have to dig a little bit more.
Yeah, we did have the
history on
Burlington
that.
corridor overlay, and then we removed that.
But,
Like,
I would
years
like to
ago.
just hear from you all. What do you anticipate, particularly for east side of Burlington? What you guys are thinking? And of course, I'll do a little bit more engagement for the public when we start updating the
mean,
comprehensive plan.
It just sounds like this is a very project-specific ask initially, is the genesis of this. And I do believe that. I mean, if they want to call around and find out or put in an application, it's probably the route they need to take. And if we're going to update the master plan, then we should update the master plan sooner rather than later. I'm not sure why I would wait several years if we know there's.
Typically,
things we
you
need to
update
correct.
the master plan every 10 years,
Yeah.
accommodating the need. And a lot of cities, you actually don't see them even update their master plan for 30
Oh,
years.
yeah.
Because usually you're not able to accomplish what the master plan guides you. So usually they're
Yeah.
still out there. But with our city, it's a little unique. We are a fast, rapidly growing city, so we have a lot of changes. So this master plan might be a little bit updated,
That's what-
outdated. So we're
Seems to be those little,
yeah,
not
so
conflicts.
we are, we definitely kept that under our radar to make sure that we're gonna move forward on that part. But if your suggestion would be just to have them to turn in the application and we'll review it, we can do that as well. And we can just direct the interested groups this way.
I mean, that's probably, I don't know, whatever council. Yeah, okay. Sounds like there's like a better understanding of what's being, well, I'm repeating what Connor said, but seemed to be,
Yeah, I feel like all of us would be open
yeah.
if that's the question. Like, how does the city feel about the potential of something?
Yeah.
Great. Show us what that potential of
Yeah.
something is. We'll take a look at it. I think. I mean,
And
somebody feel
I'd
pretty
still,
staunch?
and I wouldn't want to jump ahead of like the planning commission either. And their role is having a say in this, and us to go ahead and basically give some go ahead for a specific project essentially, and then that seems to kind of defeat the purpose of what the planning commission does. If
I would
we've
like to
already-
thank you guys. I think I got the guidance. We're open. We're a very open city, open-minded.
And we have
So-
we have a good open process. Yep, that to go through.
We're in a line.
Yes. Further public comments, further staff comments. Unless we're gonna do public comments again. Liz missed the first time. We're gonna do post-meeting comments.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. So at the last meeting, we talked about business license expirations. We've been able to pull some better data, I think. So our next step will be to, as we mentioned, we were going to send out the postcard. That will be part of our next step, but also sending out formal, informal delinquent notices to all the ones that we have on our list first, and then we would come back to you at a later time when we can get garner some more potential feedback. We've had, some late notices trickle in over the last couple months, and we have not had as much negative feedback. They've just paid their late fees. So our hope was, let's get the late notices out, see what the feedback is after that, and then we would come back to you with some more concrete hard data. So just wanted to give you an update on that process and let you know what our next step was.
Very good, thank you.
I believe Chief Freeman has one more comment.
Yeah, we'll keep going.
In an effort to keep you here even longer, I was reminded by a very astute citizen paying attention online that Faith in Blue is this Saturday. It's from 12 to 2 o'clock at the First Baptist Church. Faith in Blue, this is the third year that we participated in this. It's grown every year. It's a collaborative effort between faith-based community, the police department, and the community just to break down barriers, just to come and hang out and have a good time and enjoy conversations with each other. So invite everybody to be there, including Chief Hargis.
Wow, that's on record too. That's an official invite. Put it on his calendar. What else we got? Okay, I just had, so is there no updates on the strategic plan?
No,
Okay,
no, they're not.
all right, council member comments. Councilmember Fitzgerald.
No comments.
Councilmember Alvarez.
No comments at this time.
Councilmember Clark.
Shout out and great job to Councilmember Schneider. It's not easy to ask hard questions, so great job. I won't go on and on. Krista Harkins, welcome to the EIC. You're out there. Can't wait to see you next week. Woo. There's still 2 openings in Ward 4. I know, I'm talking about myself. And 1 more opening in Ward 3. And then there'll be another opening come November in Ward 1. So write that down. Great job, city staff. That's it for me. And shout out to Liz Ryan, the real hero of the night. I'm so glad we got to incorporate you. And Crystal, I'm glad you're alive.
We're just trying to make sure Liz Ryan gets in the minutes here. So we're just trying to make sure you get in the minutes. Councilmember Stokes.
No comments.
Councilmember Todd.
No comment.
Councilmember Saper.
No comment.
Councilmember Snyder.
No comment.
Mayor. No comment. No. Did I start with you? I did start with you, and on no comment myself. There we go. Item number 24. Consideration of request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city administrator to be held in the state on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610-0212.
Moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Alvarez.
Yes.
I thought that was Bryant that said yes, not Connor. Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
I vote for Connor every time. You didn't hear.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Item number 25, consideration of request to hold and recess into an executive session as requested by the city councilor to be held in the state on a real estate matter pursuant to Missouri Revised Statute 610-0212.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yes.
Councilmember Todd.
Yes.
Councilmember Saper.
Yes.
Councilmember Schneider.
Yes.
Oh, and with that, the live stream will cut off. Channel 2 will cut off. There'll be no further business or votes this evening. Thank you. Have a good night.